coming.
Lizzie, is this a truth, lie, or shenanigans?
Shenanigans.
I always get the dynamic duo. So this is both truth and shenanigans and tomfoolery and a whole bunch of nonsense. So the main question here centers around Blue Lives Matter. Blue Lives Matter, for those of you who don't know, was an affront to Black Lives Matter, in which people were coming out and saying that blue lives, i.e. law enforcement, their lives matter too. And so once Black Lives Matter got going back, I believe like in 2016 or whatever, you had all these people talking about all lives matter, blue lives matter, and they were standing up for law enforcement, standing up for police, saying that, you know, blue lives matter, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group that is coming out and trying to get people to be against law enforcement. So blue lives matter in this country had a huge following up until I would say like maybe 6 months ago during the pandemic, when law enforcement was starting to enforce laws and arrest people who were not paying attention to the laws that were mandated in their states as it related to COVID. So here we have on the borough of Staten Island in New York City, we have a story coming out of there about Max Pub owner Daniel Presti, if you will. So initially, Daniel had his pub, his bar shut down. I believe it was last Monday. And the bar at that time was shut down. They had their liquor license revoked because it was determined that they were not adhering to COVID restrictions. Apparently, where they are in Staten Island, it's now an orange zone, which means the numbers have skyrocketed, which means that you cannot have people inside of your restaurant, inside of your bar, congregating, eating, drinking, or what have you. It's not allowed. And so his bar was shut down because they were not adhering to those restrictions, and he doesn't have any outside space. So his bar was initially shut down last Monday. A couple of days later, they decided that they were going to defy the shutdown orders, and they were going to start sneaking people into the bar through the building next door. So they had all of the windows blacked out, but they were sneaking people into the bar through the windows next door. Inside, they were still serving people. Nobody had on masks. People were eating, they were drinking, what have you. So the police officers, the sheriff's department in this particular county on Staten Island, decided they were going to shut it down. So they let them have their little fun. And then after hours, when the bar owner, Mr. Presti, when he came out, Presti, forgive me, Mr. Presti, when he came out, they attempted to arrest him. And when they did, he ran to his car, got in his car, and subsequently ran over the sheriff's deputy.
Let's take it to the video.
And so here's the video of that. That's Mr. Presti running. Those are our law enforcement officers trying to arrest him because he did not comply. You know how they tell Black people all the time they should have complied. He didn't comply. Look, he purposely runs this guy over.
Yeah, the sheriff was in front of his car and he just runs him over.
Dragged him for several blocks.
Really?
The sheriff deputy dragged him for several blocks. Sheriff deputy went to the hospital. He has 2 fractured tibia, which means broken legs, if you will. And so wouldn't you know that the people of Staten Island, the supporters of Max Pub and Presti, they are rallying behind the bar owner who hit this law enforcement officer. Now, if this had been Black Lives Matter, they would have been blue lives, arrest him, he should have complied. But now, because it's someone that looks like them and whom they feel are violating their rights, they have turned against Blue Lives Matter. So my question...
When you say they, who are you saying? Who's they?
I'm saying the people on Long Island. I'm saying the conservative right. I'm saying a certain group of white folks. Good question. So my question to the panel is Blue Lives Matter no longer a thing?
Robbie, I'll let you start.
This is just absolutely reckless behavior, and
after reviewing the footage, I'm surprised that this man is still alive, because just at the rate that it played out, I'm shocked that the female officer didn't pump a couple of rounds through the passenger window to get to the driver.
He
That
not
was
only
just
is he still alive, he wasn't shot at. He was
right.
apprehended without, any scuffle or what have you, but he was also released without any bail.
Wow.
Yeah. See,
Now,
and that's it for me. These vehicles are terrifying. This is the equivalent of just nudging the police officer with an RPG. A motor vehicle weighs thousands of pounds and has unbelievable destructive power. I mean, the officer in question is lucky that he just got away with 2 broken tibia. Because that was a high rate of velocity that he was taken off at. And like I said, like when he started pulling away just initially, had this been had the
a
color
black man,
dynamic been a little bit different, then I
black
suspect the
man,
story would
you
have
can
played
say
out
it,
very
black man.
differently. Yeah. If this was a person of color, absolutely, it would have played out very differently.
There's no question.
It's tragic to have to acknowledge that that is the reality in America, and yeah,
I
it
mean,
just
there's a
like
history
this.
of it happening very differently. I mean, we don't
Yeah,
know
like,
what would have happened, but there's a
Before
history
you,
of those same situations.
we can draw the conclusion to what would have
That's a good way to
likely
put it. We
happened.
can draw that conclusion. You're right.
But before you make your comment, Neo, I just want to say with that video, so Mr. Presti and his lawyer made a statement today saying that he didn't hit the officer, that he never hit the officer.
Hmm.
Neo?
no, he didn't. The vehicle did.
Yeah, I really don't understand his reasoning for running over the cop. It certainly didn't look like he was being threatened by the cop. Obviously, he was simply being arrested, and he certainly wasn't treated like many black men in videos have been treated. So, um, but I gotta say, I want to go. I might be a little tangential on this, but after listening to the news conference, his attorney held, I think there's a root problem here. And that root problem is, small businesses are struggling, you know, and nobody's really trying to help. I mean, it's been estimated that over 800 small businesses a day closed down due to COVID. Matter of fact, actually, one of the small business owners we had on our show recently, on our small business spotlight, because of COVID, recently closed their door. So that was Heavenly
Oh
Garden.
no.
Um, so I'm not saying he's right to continue to do his business while we're in a pandemic. No, he shouldn't. He should not be. He should be held accountable and he should not be running over people. But it does highlight a problem, and the problem is that these businesses need help. My wife's fitness studio is like barely hanging on by a thread, just barely. And these senators and these they just won't get off their asses and get some relief to these people. So when you see someone like, the pub owner trying to stay alive, I mean, I understand it. I say it's wrong. You still make a choice for the betterment of society, but I do get it. I understand. It makes sense to me why these business owners are doing it. And all I'm saying is it's a powder keg. It's a powder keg. There's just a matter of time before, business owners just have no other options. I mean, you put your life into these businesses. My wife put a lot into her business, and if it closed down, it's going to crush her. It's the feelings are real. It's selfish, yes, agreed,
Mhm.
but the feelings are real. They're raw, they're real, and I get it. He's still wrong. I'm going to continue to say he's wrong for continuing to operate. Mel would have closed down her shop immediately because of the betterment of society and a pandemic that's passing around and her own fears. Um, but it's still, I would like to see the root problem resolved a bit.
But that's where again, where this owner and this owner's followers, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, most of the people on Staten Island, they're being very short-sighted because they are blaming law enforcement for something that isn't their issue. That isn't, they aren't the ones who created this. Why don't, so Mr. Presti, again, the owner of this particular bar, is a Trump supporter. The same Trump who took money away from the PPP funds for small businesses and gave it to his friends, his buddies, who had multi-million-dollar businesses.
Yep.
Okay?
Mhm.
He's also
Kanye.
a supporter of the Proud Boys.
Yep.
So again, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to say that we are the ones being suppressed, while at the same time siding with the oppressors. Instead of demanding better service, demanding better support from their government, from their God, Donald J. Trump, they want to go and run over this poor sheriff's deputy. And it makes absolutely no sense. And again, I am someone pre-pandemic. Yes, I am a college professor, but I also had, because I don't get paid nothing, I also had a second job in a restaurant. My restaurant closed, shut down in the middle of March and has yet to reopen. I have no idea if it's ever going to reopen. I have friends here in DC who are, like you said, your wife Mel, hanging on by a thread with their restaurants, with their bars, doing everything they can to keep their establishments open. But the problem isn't law enforcement. The problem isn't the CDC saying you need to shut down and you need to adhere to these rules. The problem is the president that you continue to support, who has not helped you in your time of need.
Robbie,
Boom.
any last thoughts, Robbie?
No, I think that it's really been covered. And to me, it's just, again, it's just that reckless behavior, using a vehicle as a weapon. I'm surprised that he was running down the street. A black man would have not have made it to the
they would have
vehicle.
opened fire.
I
I mean, I agree.
They would have opened fire. They would have tased him.
No, they would have opened fire in that car.
I was just going to say, Neil, there have been young black men in this country within the last year who've been sitting in their cars, and the police said that the car moved, inched towards
That's right.
them.
There was an actual case. I got her. Who was that? I don't remember the case. Yep.
That was the Minivan incident. Just, yeah.
All right, let's get to some of the comments online. We got Kevin Thaxton says, what happened to law and order? Mike Winter says, senators are holding up checks because they want that blanket immunity for the owners of Smithfield and Tyson's, so they don't get sued for making their assembly workers suffer through COVID. Jose says, meanwhile, Trump and peeps are spending money lavishly. Yeah, even like Robbie's point. I mean, they're going to spend money on this stupid celebration.
Mr. Party.
Jacqueline Rom says, pick a line, stick to it. Mike Wolf says, Tom Brady's small business got a big government check. Yeah.
Yep. And Tom Brady is a friend of Trump, people. Tom Brady is a friend of Trump.
I'm telling you, Mel got pennies. Pennies on the dollar. Pennies. Staten Island, Mike Winter says, Staten Island drinking matters more than blue lives. And Kevin Thaxton says, New Yorkers are alcoholics.
And can I just say very quickly, there is this myth out there that Black people in this country do not support law enforcement, that we are anti-police, that we are anti any type of authority, which couldn't be farther from the truth. I am so much down with this sheriff's deputy. I think what happened to him is appalling.
I have a lot of friends that are police.
And I hope they throw the book at Mr. Presti. 100%.
Yeah. All right, that's it for Hot Topics, guys.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right, let's